pamusoro wana baba, pamusoro wana mai, nemwadungamiri wenyika. Ndiri kuchema
Zaramba mangu, zaramba mangu, zaramba mangu,
nemwadungamiri wenyika. Ndiri kuchema vana ndimi munoreva, ndimi munotonga sindiri pano mavhanje. Ndiri kuchema vana ndimi munoreva, ndimi munotonga sindiri pano mavhanje. Ndiri kuchema ini mudzidzisi wevana pachikoro kumafani. Ndiri pano mavhanje. Ndiri kuchema
Zimbabwe's situation is currently locked in a serious crisis, while we have learners dropping out. According to a US report, around 840,000 of learners dropped out during the COVID-19 crisis. But the number is more than 1 million learners are dropping out. Why? Because Zimbabwe is even rated as one of the most expensive schools, even one of the most expensive schools in the world. The recent report done by the World Remit shows that the average price of getting an education in Zimbabwe is 7 times higher the average income of a family in Zimbabwe, which is unacceptable. Teachers are also failing to teach because they are underpaid. We have teachers earning less than 25% of the poverty data line.
I am banning this payslip to show that you truly must stop the fraud of making teachers and other civil servants suffer. We are even failing to send our children to school and colleges around the country. We even pleading with the government to stop harassing students. They must release these NAS students today. We are suffering, we have suffered enough. This is fraud. Take your rubbish away.
Which means the teachers themselves can't teach in the classroom. The state of our infrastructure is deplorable. There's no access of learning and teaching materials in our schools. So at the end of the day, we also have a government which completely disregards access to education. For example, the government is now asking parents to be paying school fees in US dollars at a time where incomes are still paid in the local currency. And we anticipate that more learners are going to continue to drop out of school. But you also look at the access to ICT in the context of modern education, at the dictates of our own new curriculum. You realize that we have schools where learners do not even have access to electricity, a desktop, let alone in the internet. But they're expected to really be studying ICT tools, and they're being examined on the same. So what that means is we have an education system which is no longer compatible with the lived realities of our people.
I, Kane Matema, the Minister of Primary and Secondary Education of Zimbabwe, am honored and privileged to announce the domestic financing commitment on education on behalf of my government. The Republic of Zimbabwe is committed to support our national education sector by appropriating the following percentage share of the national budget from 2021 to 2025.
The education financing trends in Zimbabwe, is quite interesting since 1980, because since in 1980, when the government of President Robert Mugabe took over, then we saw the introduction of free education. That means education was free, especially for primary education, in trying to promote universal access to education. And when I talk of universal access to education, I talk about making sure that everyone who would want to access education, it might be children or those that were coming back from the liberation struggle, do access education. And that was the policy that the government then took, and the policy was then affected around the 1990s, 1991, 1992, when the government introduced the structural adjustment programs that then affected the economy, and the government was now in a position that it could not support basic free education, because by then we understand that we could even get books within schools for free. Exercise book, that is the learning and teaching material was provided for free.
We have a crisis of neoliberalism, we have a crisis where government has introduced some what we call ISAP 2 in our context. Why? Because they have chosen to cut funding on social services like education. The budget allocation for education from 2018 to date has been around 12 to 13%. At a time when the Dakar Declaration would prescribe something around 20 to 22%. So government is not committed to fully fund our education. Also, there was a time where the bulk of what is allocated to education itself is not disbursed at the end of the day. So you get a vote when the budget is announced, but for the disbursement of the actual funds, the funds are not released. At times, just 60% of the funds are released annually. But also there's an issue where the bulk of those resources, little is there, are going towards wages. So you have every time 83% of the total budgetary allocation going to salaries and wages. What then that means is that we've limited the fiscal space to fund the acquisition of teaching and learning material, to develop the infrastructure in our schools and secure other relevant education materials. So really this has been the crisis. But also we have also the challenge of centralization, where we have failed to involve our communities in participating in the planning for education. So what that means is our communities also are not expected to be funding education. They cannot fund an education which is so much divorced from their lived realities. If we had a devolved education structure, we could have even business people in community areas also helping in to fund education. But also thirdly, there's also a mistrust between the government and international financiers. At some point in 2012, we had a pool of resources that was put together by donor agencies when we had an inclusive campaign, I think 2010, 2011, under Minister Portat, which was an education transition fund. And then it helped a lot in trying to secure a lot of teaching and learning materials and making our education much better.
In 2011, when I joined the service, things were good. I really liked joining the government. I was a teacher from 2003, but I was in the private sector. So during that time, it was really good to be employed by the government. So I also made my applications to the government and I was taken in. During that time, I could get my 540 remuneration, and you would hardly wait for the payday to come. I reported for work every day. Even on weekends, I would go to work and give my students extra work so that they would excel at the end of the year. Teaching was really good, you see. Now comparing with this time and era, I would think maybe I made a mistake in joining the education sector, because I'm now unable even to report for work. You see the extent to which it has gone. I'm also even unable to send my own children to school.
I want to take this opportunity to express my humble appreciation and gratitude to the government of Zimbabwe and the Global Partnership for Education for their valued support to the education sector in my country towards transforming education delivery. I wish to express my profound appreciation to the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, His Excellency, Comrade Dr. Emerson Mnangagwa, for his direction and guidance during the COVID-19 induced lockdowns that continue to affect face-to-face learning and teaching.
The current government doesn't seem to have much of goodwill with some donor agencies. But also there's also a challenge of corruption, where resources which are deployed and are supposed to be helping our education sector are disappearing. For example, during the COVID-19 crisis, we received funding, be it from UNESCO and even from our own national fiscus, which was meant for trying to help to have balls in our schools, trying to make our schools better in the context of COVID-19. We tried to make a follow-up on most of the resources, but they're still to be fully accounted for. So the issue of corruption is also a very big issue, and our Minister of Education has also been quoted from time to time in the Auditor General's report as having failed really to acquit its resources well. So corruption is also a big issue.
It is the duty of the state to make sure that every Zimbabwean, access education, and where it said that the state should progressively implement, basic state-funded education. And in 2019, we concluded, a process of coming up with the Education Amendment Act that is in line with the provisions of the Constitution, and it provides again for basic state-funded education. But the challenge now, because the law says education is free from ECD up to Form 4, and we've heard the president, announcing that, education in Zimbabwe will be free. In 2018, it was announced that free basic education in 2019. In 2020, it was announced free basic education in 2021. In 2021, it was announced 2022. And in 2022, it was announced that 2023, we are going to enroll, to start rolling out, free basic state-funded education. But for us, we see it, as a statement, because what is on the ground right now, does not show that, the government will be in a position to make sure that it is rolled out. However, I know that they will hide with, the policy, because the policy says progressively implement. And we want to see how they are going to progressively implement, given the fact that, the government, in terms of financing, we are failing to reach the 20% Dakar Declaration, which says 20% of the budget should go towards education.
Zimbabwe is committed to support our national education sector by protecting and increasing the share of the national budget dedicated to education towards the 20% global benchmark. In 2021, education's share was 13.56%, and by 2025, we commit to increase this to 20% to implement the blended approach to learning and to also have a livable wage for teachers who have been affected by the pandemic and economic challenges. Meanwhile, I raise my hand for GPE.
But again, the 2022 fell short of that commitment that the president made. And we wonder when, such commitments are made and Zimbabwe becomes, part of such commitments and such declarations, and then we fail, to meet such. We wonder where is the sincerity of the Minister of Finance in making sure that, education is equally funded. But, despite the issue of the actual budget that goes to the Minister of Primary and Secondary Education, if I want to be specific, you see there are several challenges that are there in terms of education financing in this country. Sometimes the budget that is given to the ministry is not what is dispersed. There's a difference between budget allocation and disbursement. And there are also structural challenges of budget utilization within the ministries. You find that at the end of the usually at the end of the year, the ministry might, send back money to treasury. That is not utilized. So these are the challenges to do with financing in our education sector in this country. It's not only about the cake not being enough, but also that small cake is not well utilized. Or what would have been promised to say we are going to be giving this to you is not then dispersed by the Minister of Finance.
At ATOS, we tried to come up with a model of the wholesale improvement of our education system, which we call ADAPT. So under ADAPT, we are saying to government, on the A, we are saying let's just adequately fund education. When we say adequate, we know resources can never be adequate. But we are saying if we have signed up to some international obligations, looking at maybe the Dakar Declaration. Let's meet that threshold of 20 to 22% annually. This can go a long way to have adequate resources in our education system. But also we are saying let's devolve how we are managing. The D is for devolving how we manage the education system. The more we involve our communities in planning for education, the more we would also expect them to raise resources to make our education better. We want our communities to fully participate in providing education. So we don't want, we want to devolve our education system and also democratize it. If we democratize it, we encourage participation of all citizens. That is how we can also harness their resources into the education system. There are a lot of citizens who want to fund Zimbabwe's education, but they don't trust the centralized system, which is opaque, which is run from Harare by one permanent secretary who is dictating anything and everything to the people. But if our communities are involved, we have more resources coming in from the people. And if we democratize, we also have the best brains running our education system. We don't want people to be appointed into positions of authority because they are loyal to the ruling party, for example. We want people to be in those positions because of merit. Because if we have the best brains running our education system, we attract more funding because people can look at us and see a credible and working education system. But also the other A is about us trying to address the curriculum deficits. If you have talked to parents, you will be told of multiple challenges that are facing our curriculum. We have assignments that are given to learners which they not attend to because they don't have resources. The resources are limited. So let's look at our curriculum and review it, tweak it to ensure that it suits our contextual realities. But also addressing curriculum deficits and work on teacher continuous learning. We don't want our teachers to be redundant. For them to inspire or open confidence, we should have the best teacher in the classroom. But the P now is for us to promote labor justice as a nation. Some of our challenges are just because the teachers are not happy. If we promote labor justice, how do we promote labor justice? We get our labor laws right. The Constitution of Zimbabwe will provide for a right to strike, a right to collective bargaining, but you go to the ancillary laws, they will prescribe the same. So we want to, we are urging the government to really adjust those laws so that at the end of the day, we have a legal framework which gives teachers a space to enjoy their labor rights. But also looking at their incomes. If we are paying them on salaries which are less than 25% of the poverty line, how do we expect them to deliver in the classroom? So we are saying salaries for teachers, they should be able to earn a living wage. And at the moment we've been demanding just about $540, which is not much. So if we have labor justice for teachers, we are sure that we have motivated teachers in our classroom. But then the T now, we are looking at technological and infrastructure investment. We need a lot of resources in that area. Now, for us to have a technology infrastructure in our marginalized schools, the first thing that we need is to set up a fund which was initially proposed by the Ramasanga Commission, which is an education equalization fund. Because with an education equalization fund, we can then have revenue coming through from our mineral resources. We can even have a small tax maybe on our petroleum imports. Then we pull the resources together and we try to work up a modality of equalizing learning opportunities by giving better infrastructure in our rural schools with their laboratories, libraries, internet connectivity, electricity, among other things. We need to have a solid plan of when are we going to have all schools having electricity and internet, and then we can then have our education equalization fund being used to mobilize resources to achieve the same. But before I close, I think also on labor justice, we are also insisting on the setting up of a substantive rural attraction and retention allowance to be given to rural teachers. We have a crisis where the majority of teachers are in rural areas, are in flight mode. They are trying to transfer from the schools facing one challenge or the other, or others have completely transferred. So the best teachers are living in rural schools. And even our government doesn't do us any favor. At times when someone is punished for one misconduct or the other, as a form of punishment, they are deployed to teach in a rural school, which is very unfortunate. So for us, we are saying we have some of the best brains being born and bred in these rural areas. they deserve the same quality of education that is received in Indian centers. So if we have a rural retention and attraction allowance, which is 100% of the basic salary of a teacher, we will have the best teachers stampeding to teach in our rural schools. This is the case in other countries. You go to Mexico, you find this happening. You go to parts of Mozambique, you find people stampeding to go there because they get a better salary, because they are marginalized community. You go to the mountainous areas of Swaziland, you find people stampeding to go there. Why? Because there is some reward of going there. So it should be a government's attitude to say those who choose to work in these marginalized communities should get an extra incentive so that we do not leave anyone behind.
With the new curriculum that was introduced, we do not have the resources, the teaching and learning material. So it's now difficult for us to teach the children. You see, having all the material, it becomes easy for a teacher to pass knowledge to the children and also for the learners to research. In my instance, I'm a rural teacher, and most of the stuff that is required in the new curriculum, you find it on internet. And most of our students do not have access to internet. So it's quite a setback. We do not have learning material, and it has greatly affected our teaching. And also the teachers, we are so poor. I cannot afford a smartphone, let alone to buy data for research. So it has indeed crippled the education sector.
Mwana one anenge achida 10 ma textbook, then my exercise book. Ndo zvimwe chete, mwana one anenge achida 14 ma exercise book. Nenyaya yenyu curriculum yawe yakaunza mazuva. Saka pavana 2 vari grade 3 semubereki ndinotenga 28 my exercise book. Akangopera uchaenda futi wodzokera mushopo woita se wondotenga.
There are many challenges that have risen because of the underfunding of education. Let me start with the issue of the facilitator of education, the teachers. You know, we over the past 5 years or so, we've had teachers striking over the welfare issues. And when a teacher is striking or when a teacher is not happy, then the quality of education is questionable. And that is one of the major effects that is there. And also, we have seen a rise in dropouts in schools due to failure to pay school fees. Even if the government has come up with a policy to say no learner should be chased away from school because of failing to pay school fees, we have seen a major rise of school dropouts because of failing to pay school fees, especially in the rural areas, and especially if you look at the regions such as the Matabele regions and part of Manikal and Masingo, where you find that dropouts there are really high.
In terms of 13, ndakaenda chikoro ndakanyora D7 zvakanaka, ndakuenda form 1 ndakapinda term yekutanga. Izvezvi yechitiri mai vakashaya mari, vabereki vangu vakashaya mari yekuti ndiende chikoro. Ndofunga kuti ndiende kuchikoro nekuti vabereki vangu vari kushaya mari yekundiendesa kuchikoro. Handina bhutsu, mauniform, bhegi nezvimwe zvinodiwa nemwanasikana kana achienda kuchikoro. Ndokumbira shiro yangu ndeyekuti ndikanyora form 4 ndozoenda form 6 ndozoitawo makosi ekuti ndiitowo basa rekurapa varwere.
These are the effects of underfunding of the education sector. We speak of issues to do with learning and teaching materials. Many schools do not have learning and teaching materials, and this is due to the underfunding of the education sector. And we speak mainly of a shortage of infrastructure. You say within the existing schools there is said to be a shortage of over 40,000 classrooms, and the country, the ministry has announced recently to say the country has got a shortfall of around 3,000 schools. These are the challenges that are brought about by by issues of financing, inadequate financing of the education sector. And the ministry has announced that this year they are going to be, constructing 35 schools. We wonder whether they are going to meet this target, because we know that they are underfunded. And we wait and see. But these are the challenges that are there that are caused by underfunding of the education sector.
I'm not able now to show my expertise. You see, I'm a language teacher. I teach English language. When you do comprehensions, each child should have his or her own copy of the passage that you'll be reading. So without the resources, it becomes very difficult to impart those comprehensional skills to the learners. Sometimes you find a situation whereby the whole school has a textbook, only one textbook in a class of 60 students. So you can't work out a miracle on how you are going to teach the comprehension passage to the students. And sometimes we won't have even a teacher's copy that you pre-read before the lesson. So it becomes again a difficulty in the teaching process. So there is need for us to have the teaching materials for the teachers and also for the students. And there is another thing, especially in rural schools, we don't have furniture. The students will be seated in 3s or 4s on a desk, on one desk. So it becomes again a problem, because the students would have a learning barrier. They won't be comfortable.
Asi maticha ngwapiwa mari inotenga 500 years cash.
Pe maticha pay inoenderana nebasa ravanoita, inoita kuti ticha akwanisewo kutenga hembe yekuti aende kubasa achinomira mberi kwevana akashambidzika achidzidzisawo vana. Ngavape maticha zvinovakwanira rokuti anokwanisawo kuendesawo mwana wake kuchikoro, anokwanisawo kuraramisa mhuri kumba kwanenge abva.
Teaching is just like being a pastor. People don't just join teaching just for the sake of earning money. We have been called to become teachers. We have children at heart. We have the parents at heart, the future of our country. What's just keeping me from going abroad in search of greener pastures are the children of Zimbabwe. If I go, who will teach the children? Who will teach my young sister's children? Who will teach my young brother's children? If I just think of going and joining others who went abroad. So we're just saying to the government, it should listen to our pleas.
Crisis in the education sector will only be resolved when citizens realize that it is not only the duty of the teacher to demand a living wage, it is a collective responsibility, because if the teacher decides to move out of the classroom, the children, the sons and daughters of the peasants, of the working class are going to suffer. So the demanding right to education for the learners is a collective responsibility. When a teacher is demanding a living wage, parents should also join in. And also teachers should also support parents to demand fully funded education in line with Section 75 for Constitution, because we are well aware that the parents cannot afford the school fees. So we should come together as parents and teachers and demand a right to education for the learners in line with Section 75 of the Constitution of the Republic.
Ndimi munorera, ndimi munotonga, sindiri pano mavhura njere, ndiri kuchemawo. Vana ndimi munorera, ndimi munotonga, sindiri pano mavhura njere, ndiri kuchemawo. Ndini mudzidzisi wevana pachikoro kumafanya, ndiri pano mavhura njere, ndiri kuchemawo. Ndini mudzidzisi wevana pachikoro kumafanya, ndiri pano mavhura njere, ndiri kuchemawo.